All right, let's take you now back to Nasrec, and this is where the United Nations Secretary General António Guterres is expected to hold a press conference shortly. My colleague Vuyo Mvoko is there. He joins us live now. Vuyo, good evening to you. Do we know what the UN chief is likely to communicate this afternoon?
Well, not yet. Certainly from the communique the United Nations sent yesterday, they said we will know, and once he actually speaks, and they will circulate the speech afterwards. That's the closest they've actually gotten to telling us what he is going to say. But of course, ahead of the summit, he has expressed his worry. Of course, he has to be as diplomatic as a U.S. Secretary General can possibly be, but he was worried that especially the country that's going to take over the presidency of the G20 is behaving the way they have been behaving. He has the closest, I think, the Secretary General of the UN has said is that he is worried that things or the agenda shouldn't really take the G20 back because he feels a lot of progress has been made over the years around issues of climate change, also around debt financing for developing countries. So he is particularly worried about those issues. He did express his view that he hopes that there will be no reversal at the very least of that particular agenda. Of course, it's a concern that South Africans also have, because if you listen to people, what they have been talking about, the agenda they believe should be advanced is an agenda that actually serves ordinary people, people on the ground, the most vulnerable of communities. Take a listen to what some people said ahead of this summit, as they were asked by our journalists across the board what their expectations were, what they are hoping for at this particular conference.
I don't think ikhona into ezochange mina lana. If ever singakhuluma ngendaba ukuthi khona into ezochange ne, if babe implement early from 1994 onward, maybe bekuzoba khona change. Para manje njengoba sikhuluma nje, yabona kuwesi kakhulu manje, mina ngiboni next. Nakhona azophinda shaye futhi la kwilokhu ngane u-tax because ama-tariffs wakhe angithi wakhuphulile manje ne, njengoba wakhuphulile ama-tariffs wakhe kusho ukuthi kuzophinde kube nzima still.
I-G20 izokwenza lokho ezokwenza, but then abantu abasafalayo abantu abaku-ground, the most people abasebenzi la South Africa, i-black tax imenzani njengawe nje, ikwenzani i-black tax? Kuyondliwa emakhaya, abantwana bazobuyela esikoleni, idorobha lingcolile. So yini different ezofika ne-G20 those few days nje bese yahamba? I don't think izokwenza different. If ibizokwenza different, akubonakale ngabantu abaningi beqhasha bethola umsebenzi. Kubonakale ngakuthi abantu bangaphandle mabengena eSouth Africa bengene ngama-permits besebenza into eradio. Ubugebengu buhigh, i-G20 izoyenza.
Ngiyacabanga ukuthi kuzoletha umehluko because as much as bavumelele ukuthi bahlangane babonisane kakhulukazi ngezomnotho wamazwe wonke, ngicabanga ukuthi izoletha intuthuko and izoletha difference. Going forward, I think a positive will come out.
The host country, of course, does have its own expectations in line with the themes that South Africa has actually chosen for this particular G20 issues of equality, sustainability, and the minister of electricity was talking earlier about the just transition, what South Africa is hoping for a leveling of a playing field. Dr. Newzroom Afrika talking about what they are expecting, what they will be pushing as, of course, leaders arrive to consider the draft declaration, I'm told, that they must consider. And just transition is, of course, a big part of what South Africa hopes progress will be made around. Take a listen to what Dr. Ramokgopa had to say around that particular matter. Boni.
If you look at the numbers, there's 600 million people who don't have access to electricity. Mission 300, a combination of philanthropy and governments on the continent have committed that we want to have that by 2030, get 300 million access to electricity. And of course, we have said that Africa has got renewable energy resources. I mean, we are unmatched. I think 60% of solar irradiation can be derived out of the continent, and yet the level of investment in renewables, especially solar, is just 1% of the total value of what has been invested across the globe. So it's important that we must concentrate our efforts to ensure that Africa, that has got huge renewable energy endowment and also the biggest gap with regards to electricity access, is the one that is front center of our initiative. And that's why this collaboration here is meant to do that.
Of course, the UN Secretary would be worried about peace in the world. Of course, I mean, we know what is happening, what continues to happen in the Ukraine. We've seen what has been happening in Sudan. We know what is happening in the Middle East. Those are issues that he has expressed concern about, and he hopes that the leaders who will be gathering here tomorrow and the day after will look at those issues as well, because without peace, really, the world cannot sit comfortably or sit in rooms and smile with each other and talk the beautiful language that forums like these are known for, and yet in certain corners of the world, people are living or are in war situations. That is the message he actually sent to foreign ministers a couple of months ago when they sat and looked at the G20 agenda. So we will, of course, hear what it is exactly that is topmost or foremost in his mind when he gets to address the media briefing. On that stage, you can see journalists are beginning to gather. It's only a few minutes before that briefing actually starts. So we will indeed hear from what the UN Secretary General has to say this time around. And on the back of that problem, which he too did express his worry about, which is the tendency of the United States in particular to not really pull as much as on these issues as most countries tend to. How open he will actually be on that, on the back of what he has said or the concerns he has expressed previously, of course, is what we will hear in a few minutes' time. Poli.
Vuyo, I'm reluctant to let you go because, as you say, it's only a matter of time before the UN chief does address at that media briefing. But we know that just a few hours ago, he was at the COP conference, COP30 conference in Brazil. And there, the understanding is that he lamented that 10 years after that landmark Paris climate conference, little has been achieved. Communities still bearing the brunt of extreme weather conditions. We know, Vuyo, that a number of developed countries did make pledges to poorer countries that they are going to help finance this climate transition. Those talks, is there going to be any shift, at least from what we have heard of people's expectations coming out of this G20 summit?
Indeed, I mean, you will have seen scenes from that conference in Brazil, where indigenous communities feel that not much, if any, progress has been made over the past 10 years, especially given, of course, the pledges and the commitments that were made. And they made quite a statement in Brazil. You will have seen those people will have seen those scenes of them storming that conference, really agitating for change, very concrete change. And there's an opportunity here, especially given the theme, because sustainability is part of South Africa's theme, and South Africa really pushing for that change. And I mean, from what the Sherpas said at over the weekend after Sunday, progress is being made. People are talking the language, keen to make the commitments, but the problem, or there is a lack of real, actual, concrete action, and that is what is holding things back, which they say shouldn't be underestimated or undermined, because previously there's been a reluctance to even, talk the kind of language that is being taught. But of course, talk is cheap, as people say. At the end of the day, talk has to be followed by a concrete action, and hopefully that is what this particular summit will achieve. But then again, considering what the United States in particular has been saying over the year, and especially over the past few days, where they say that they're going to reset the button. They're going to take the G20 to what it was originally meant to do. And if you read between the lines, they don't like as it is often put, the woke language of the world today. So reset a la the United States, which is going to be the next president of the G20, is actually worrying to many people. To what extent the UN Secretary General in particular is worried about that is, of course, what we will hopefully hear in the next few minutes.